Take my hand and come with me, darling, down to the shoreline.
Hello and welcome to the Nature Garden Podcast with me, Carl Steinson, and the weekending show team from Lionheart Radio. Come along with us as we take a bonny wee wander along nature paths, shorelines, riverbanks, through woods and wetlands, parks and gardens, and it's a chance to hear some great music and Northumbrian stories. On today's show, we're filled with all the delights that May brings. Plants and shrubs and trees are growing fast, and late spring summer birds are arriving. Tom Pattinson is looking at the darling buds of May and being safe in the garden. Tom Cadwallender is enjoying the wonderful space of Druridge Bay and the amazing array of birds that flock there. And Steve Lowe's taking out a subscription this week to the Green Gym. Plus some top tips for the garden from Tom P. All coming up on the Nature Garden Podcast. Despite some rather chilly weather of late, magical May has sprinkled fairy dust all over the garden and countryside. And our adventures this week begin with Tom Pattinson, who is enjoying and riding the highs and lows of temperature in the garden amidst the blossoming.
Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lace hath all too short a date. That was the bard writing several hundred years ago, about May, I guess, comparing it. And he was spot on, wasn't he? Because from a gardener's point of view, May's quite a tricky month. Throughout May, it's still possible to have overnight frost, which puts some of the more tender plants at risk. And it really does still shake the darling buds of May. The plum escapes because my Victoria plum was in full flower. In April, sometimes late March it flowers, but by the middle of April the flowering was finished. 1 or 2 steady days allowed the insects on the wing to help pollinate it, even though it's self-pollinating, self-fertile. And then the pear tree was in full glorious bloom in April, late April, and just as we crept into May, the flowers were just starting to fade, and I can see already that there are 1 or 2 tiny embryo pears forming, which is good news again. But May, well, May is a conundrum, isn't it? This is when all of my apple varieties start to bloom as if there were no tomorrow. Most of those are self-fertile again, the culinary type and the dessert type I grow. But one of them, Bramley seedling, is what we call a triploid variety. It needs to be pollinated by the pollen from 2 other separate varieties or cultivars. But there are plenty to choose from. They're all flowering at the moment. And of course the crabapple, ornamental crabapple, has a long flowering period. So the trick here is, if you want all of your apples to be pollinated, including the Bramley seedling, you plant 1 good crabapple. And its long flowering period picks off the different apples as they start to flower. Those darling buds are certainly being shaken at the moment. And the big problem is, it grounds the pollinating insects. So we have to rely on a bit of the wind, getting the pollen from one to another. But there are some insects on the wind, and it's still possible. I'm sure the crops will be fine. I grow quite a few fruit trees and fruit bushes. And amongst the fruit bushes at the moment, the gooseberries, the red currants, the black currants, they're all setting their fruits, and they look good as well. Even the raspberries, which have been mulched at the feet, as all of my fruits are, put an organic mulch around their roots near the ground on the surface. It keeps them cooler in the summertime, and it keeps moisture within. And they've all received a general organic fertiliser. So fingers crossed, we're going to get through May in that respect. Next thought for me, is of course there can be that overnight frost anytime. We're approaching the middle of May now, so I've recently just, as I wrote somewhere, taken a leap of faith. I started planting out some of my half-hardy vegetables. I raise my vegetables in pots. Sow the seeds in cell trays, then put the little cell or plug plants into pots and grow them on. I insist on this because we have a shorter growing season in Northumberland, in England, and they need all the help they can. So if I plant out, say, sweet corn I've been planting out this week, I'm planting them in a block planting because sweet corn is wind pollinated, so they need to be in a group together so they can help one another to form those beautiful cobs of corn. I've planted them out, but they're quite sturdy plants, and the trick, I have hardened them off. The greenhouse has no artificial heat at all. It's what you call a cold greenhouse, and it's toughening them up ready for action. They're planted out, the wind is shaking them a wee bit, but they can handle the May winds. And I look forward to eating the first of those delicious cobs sometime around the end of August. I get two good cobs to each plant. I plant 24 out of them in a block, and I look forward to that.
Druridge Bay is one of those wonderful Northumbrian beaches, and just in case you were in any doubt about it, our birding chap Tom Cadwallender from the British Trust for Ornithology is a massive fan of Druridge Bay. Over to you, Tom.
I lived not far from Druridge Bay back in, it must have been the early 70s into the 80s. And I used to spend a lot of time down there. And the reserves have got better and better, actually. There's a string of, water reserves, and some of them are brackish, some of them are freshwater, some of them are kind of inundated by seawater, and they provide quite a range of wet habitats. We've got deep pools, shallow pools, kind of tidal pools, and it's absolutely fascinating. But it's a great mixture of things and a great diversity. But as you're kind of making your way in your kind of bird watching career, if you like, you kind of want to sort of experience all sorts of things. But in the early days, it was very easy there because the pools were there. They were there because of a result of coal mining, basically. That's what it boiled down to be. And deep mining, a lot of it, where the underground mines would collapse and they would create inundations in the ground, mining subsidence as it's known. And these little hollow areas would fill with water, and they become quite interesting, become quite established, and they would attract birds. And others have been there as the result of open cast mining, like the Druridge Bay Country Park, for example, in East Chevington Nature Reserve. And these provide their own kind of way of viewing birds. And I like to think that, in your kind of, as I've mentioned, your early days of bird watching, it's kind of handy to have hides and things so you can actually sit and study birds. And I would go down to Druridge Bay, and at the southern end of the bay you've got Cresswell Pond. Cresswell is a mining subsidence pond, and it's been around for 40, 50 years that I've known about. And I've seen some really interesting birds there over the years. But it's really good. There's a hide at the south end. You can walk to it. You can see birds there quite easily. And there's a range of water birds who will use that site. But also, in the breeding season, we've got avocets there. And avocets have only just recently colonised the county, which is fantastic, really, when you think about it, as a result of climate change, which it must be. So then you go to Cresswell Pond, then you go up to Druridge Pools, which is a mixture of wet grassland, and there's a deep pool there, which is a result of open cast mining. And you have a nice, interesting selection of wet grassland wading birds there. Plus, also you have wildfowl as well. But in the spring, just now, for example, you've got species like ruff. Ruff are wading birds, and the males and females are different. The males are called ruff, and the females are called reeves. And they get their name from the breeding plumage, where the males will have this great feathery ruff around their necks, and they will leck. That means the males will gather together and display to one another, trying to attract a female. And so they're there at the minute. So yes, it's really good to see that. Plus, there's also passage waders can drop in there quite often. So you never know what you're going to find. A little bit further north, you've got East Chevington, again as a result of open cast mining, but it's a series of pools, two main ones in particular. And the southern pool has got a vast reed bed around it now, and the northern pool has got a fringe of a reed bed. But these reed beds attract species like bearded tits, marsh harriers, and occasionally bittern will be there. But the pool is really quite helpful because it is largely a freshwater pool there. And the terns that breed on Coquet Island will come across and bathe there on a regular basis, on a daily basis. And we can see all species of terns, right, even including the roseate tern, which is quite special in its own way because it's the rarest breeding seabird that we've got and breeds on Coquet Island. And you head north from East Chevington and you get to Druridge Bay Country Park. Druridge Bay Country Park is, as its name suggests, it's a big recreational area, it's a cafe, and people will just go and have a walk there. But it's still quite interesting for birds because there's a lot of different types of wooded habitats as well as the water. And again, the country park, the Ladybird Neck, is as a result of deep mining. The open cast mining. And from there you go north to Hawksley, which is at the north end of Druridge Bay. Hawksley is kind of the flagship of the reserves there, and there's a fabulous new visitor centre. And again, it's a wetland reserve as a result of open cast mining, but it's getting much more well established. There's a lot of woods there and a lot of shallow pools where you'll find wading birds and wildfowl. So you have kind of all year round interest in all these places, and you can actually make it kind of your patch, your home base, and you can spend a whole day on Druridge Bay. The reserves are managed by and owned by Northumberland Wildlife Trust. They've got majority of them, and the country park is owned by the Northumberland County Council. So there's a great wealth of kind of different habitats and different experiences you can have, and if you're kind of just out for the day and you could string all these things together and really make a great day of it and see a load and load of fantastic birds, of breeding birds, passage birds and wintering birds, depending on the time of year. But it's great. I love Druridge Bay, and that's where I cut my ornithological teeth, back in the early 70s. I still have a big soft spot in my heart for the place. And indeed, I managed sites on Druridge Bay as well back in the late 80s and early 90s. So again, yes, it's I am a little bit biased, but it's great. And perhaps I'll talk about other places on the Northumberland coast in future podcasts. But for me, the Northumberland coast is just one of the most fabulous places to go and birdwatch. I've travelled the world, I've looked at some amazing places, but actually the Northumberland coast is up there. Some great experiences. So yes, if you're looking for somewhere to go, have a look at Druridge Bay for a first off, and hope you enjoy yourselves.
Tom Pattinson is busy as a bee in the garden at the moment, but hang on a sec, maybe it's time to slow down just a little and think things through a bit, with the help of some sensible advice from Tom.
I get a great deal of enjoyment from my gardening, and I think some of it comes from a positive approach and careful planning. There are visitors come in occasionally, the family arrive, and it's a place that should be safe. So at the point where we're just going to dive into summer and everything seems to happen in and around outside because we look forward to the sunny days when we can relax and wander around, barbecues, sit by a pond, that sort of thing, we should really check on what we're going into. Technically, it should be, and in theory, it should be the safest place around the house, the garden, the haven, the ideal place to relax. But according to the Royal Society for the Prevention of Accidents, ROSPA, ROSPA for short, it's not entirely safe. Year on year, they record 300,000 people have been injured in accidents which happen in or around the garden and have to visit hospital. That's just the number that visit hospital. And 100,000 of those, sadly, are children. I ask myself, how many people have minor accidents and don't even bother to visit hospital? I'm thinking in terms of a thorn in the hand, pruning roses or deadheading roses, a graze, a fall, tripping on some loose pavement, or being stung by a nettle, which is painful, of course, but it wears off. You don't go to hospital with that. How many accidents such as that happen that could be prevented? So, at this time of year, it pays to look around the garden and say, is that an accident spot? Is that an accident waiting to happen? One of the big things I look for is debris lying round, bits and pieces, canes, tools lying around, forks, rakes, spades, hose pipe, anything of that nature. Keep it tidy. Tidiness is next to godliness. And then, of course, it gets much more complicated. We have to mow the lawn. The lawnmower is driven by, say, electricity. It's plugged into the socket in the garage or outdoor socket. Have you got a residual current device? That is something that plugs into the socket, then you plug the lawnmower plug into that. And if there is a fault somewhere along the line, if you get your toe, dare I say it, or your foot underneath, or your fingers worse still, into the cutting blades of the lawnmower, it actually cuts off the electricity. It's a fail-safe. Possibly costs under £20 for a decent residual current device. What price do you put on your life and being electrocuted? That's just one thing. If you're cutting the hedge with something similar, it's not unheard of for someone to cut through the cable. You need that current breaker plugged in to the source of electricity for safety's sake. And of course, whatever gardening job you're doing, wear gloves. Don't be macho and say, I don't need gloves. Protect your hands, whatever you are doing. And if you're cutting that hedge, I'd suggest to you, because I do this, it should be covered from head to toe in protective equipment. That means a hat of some sort, your eyes for sure, maybe a face mask as well, gloves, and even down to the tough boots or shoes at the base. Think about it. Take it seriously. What else is on the list? Oh my goodness. Pesticides, fungicides, herbicides. Read the instructions if you must use those in your garden. Read the instructions and, for goodness sake, store them safely, way beyond the hands of children. But there's so many things to think about. And we haven't even touched on the flowers, the plants. Are the flowers in your border safe? Are there children around learning from the hand-to-mouth stage, putting things in their mouths they pick up? There are lots of commoner garden plants which are poisonous. At the Alnwick Poison Garden, the Alnwick Garden, where I take tours, 20-minute tours, we have 100 in the high season, different plants which can kill. And many of them you recognise from your garden. Do a check before you go into summer. Is your garden safe?
Steve Lowe from the Northumberland Rivers Trust and Cresswell Peel Tower project has been getting fit with subscribers to something called the Green Gym. It's a wonderful project run in conjunction with the Newcastle upon Tyne Hospital's NHS Foundation Trust. Here's Steve with co-founder Tony Poole.
Hi everyone, this is Steve. Now, I've got to say how lucky I am because I absolutely love working with people. So in my roles, various roles anyway, with the Rivers Trust and also with Cresswell Peel Tower, I have loads of opportunity to do that and to work with volunteers in particular. Now, this weekend, we had a really, really special day with our friends from the NHS. What a lovely day today, eh? Isn't it?
Yeah, it's wonderful.
And we're here at Cresswell Walled Garden, doing a bit of work with the Newcastle Hospitals and Trust Green Gym.
Yep.
Hi, Tony, you all right?
I'm fine,
That's
thanks.
a mouthful, like, isn't it?
It is a bit of a mouthful.
So we just make it a Green Gym from now on.
Yeah, we'll just call it the Green Gym.
Yeah.
Or North Green Gym.
Yeah. So we've been doing this for a little while, so and you're one of the ones who's helped to set it up. So what's the Green Gym all about then?
Yeah, so the Green Gym was set up a few years ago now, and the purpose of the Green Gym was to get out and do some conservation work, but also kind of physical and mental well-being of staff members in Newcastle hospitals. Me and the other founder, Sarain Cannig-Sundram, really were keen to do, what we could for the environment, and so we started links with yourself, and it went from there. Really, we've got quite a few members at the moment who attend things like this, doing the walled garden, or we've done tree planting, beach cleans, these sorts of things.
Yeah, and people keep on coming back, so that obviously the physical graft isn't an obstacle.
No, it doesn't put people off. We tend to have a core of people that come to the groups. I think as during the winter months, not so many people want to come out, but summertime we normally see the numbers pick up. And as part of the physical aspect of it, as I say, a lot of it is kind of the socialising and just getting together and having a nice time.
Yeah, because everyone seems to get on really well with each other, and there's always something happening, and you can see the difference as well after you've done some of the work as well, can't you? Yeah.
And I think the thing is that people that come along to this can do as much or as little as they want. So
there's no pressure.
There's no pressure.
No, I do want to sit around and do nothing.
Yeah.
Then just follow my lead, basically.
Like you, yeah.
Yeah. No, that's brilliant. I mean, I think this is a really good idea. It's gone really well. We obviously had a hiatus during COVID, which again, I think everybody listening will probably say, take our hats off to you guys for that. But this is added value, really. So thank you very much for taking part.
Oh, and you're welcome. We love it. So long may it continue.
Yeah. So if there's anyone up there in the NHS hospitals, Newcastle bit that's not coming out Green Gym, and why aren't you here, basically? Because it's lush, isn't it?
Yeah, and all they need to do is contact us via email, either myself or Sarain, and we'll add you to the distribution list and let you know when the events are on.
Well, that's brilliant. I've got to say a big thank you to everybody. Thanks very much.
And thanks to you.
Wait, no. Catch you later.
All right, thanks.
Now, Lucy,
Yeah.
you're our youngest volunteer here today, and you had a birthday yesterday, didn't you? Very happy returns for your birthday. And how many years have you been alive?
16.
16, brilliant. Well, I've got to say, you've probably been at the Green Gym sessions as much as anybody, and thank you very much for that. We all think you're fab, so thanks for that. And do you enjoy coming along?
Yeah.
Yeah? What sort of things have you particularly enjoyed?
I like the beach cleans, right?
Yeah.
But I would have to say, I do like the garden better.
Oh, right, yeah. Is that because it's a bit warmer?
Yeah.
Oh, right,
It's a bit chilly on a beach clean.
But it's the first time I've seen you without a hat.
I know,
so
it's shocking.
It's shocking.
I do have hair.
Yes, yeah, you do indeed. And, no hat, Lucy. I don't know what's happening.
I'm a
that
new
must
person.
be a coming of age thing, I think.
I feel quite weird, like I'm lost without it.
You're grand. So, but you do come along voluntarily. You're not being dragged, are you? No. Well, that's good. So, what sort of things are you thinking about doing once you finish school then?
Well, I want to go to uni and do archaeology.
Okay.
And then I don't know what I'm going to do after that.
Yeah. So has actually been at a site like this with Cresswell, with the peel tower and everything. Has that helped him a little bit in your thinking? That's really fab. Yeah, excellent. And of course, we do occasionally get dogs coming through. So
Like the dogs,
you're starting to melt then, don't you?
I can't believe you don't like them.
Oh, hey, shh! Hey, this is going broadcasting. Don't tell everybody. No, it's dogs and me have a checkered past. Let's just say that. But no, but it's seriously, it's great seeing you at these things every time we have something on, and I think it's brilliant that young people also want to get involved with this sort of work. And I guess that it's a daft question, really. It's a self-leading one, but you would recommend it for people just getting out and that. Yeah, because of course you're also with older people, so and you're able to communicate with them. This is not everybody's cup of tea, is it? Nope. Right. Well, that's brilliant. Thanks for spending a little bit of time to say hello, and happy birthday
Thanks.
yesterday.
I'll go put my hat back on.
Okay. See you later. Thank you. It was a really good weekend, and all the work that we did with the Green Gym is going towards a project that's just been started at Cresswell Peel Tower. We're actually doing a fundraising programme for what we call Bees and Trees at Cresswell. Now, this is actually on a platform called Space Hive, so if anyone wants to know more about it, you can visit www.spacehive/Bees and Trees at Cresswell. That'll tell you all you need to know about the project. Let's hope you can chuck in a couple of quid as well, because every penny counts. Cheers, guys. Gan canny.
It's a very exciting time as new arrivals come to Northumberland. Swallows and house martins making their first forays into barns and eaves looking for nest sites. But, Tom Cadwallender, is it just me, or are they a bit late?
Well, they're back. In fact, our first swifts of the year have just been flying over the house, which is fantastic. That means summer is here, or just around the corner anyway. Swallows and house martins have been back a few days, or perhaps even a week or so, 10 days. Although the kind of the bulk of the birds are not necessarily in situation yet. And there appears to have been a bit of a hold-up for not just swallows and martins, but a lot of our kind of songbirds, the lesser white-throat, common white-throat, and one or two other species. They've been held up because of this prolonged, must have been about 3 weeks, we had a northerly airflow, and that just held up all of these northerly bound migrants. And it's right across Europe. I've been looking at the regular sort of bird recording software sort of updates you see on the internet. There's eBird, there's BirdTrack from the BTO, there's Teletracking, which is a European-based one, and all of them have been saying the same, that there's been this hold-up right across Europe of all these summer visitors that we're expecting. So the spring appears to be a couple of weeks late. And birds will get down to it as soon as they can, I think. Without a doubt, they'll get stuck in. But yes, it's disappointing that we are a little bit later than normal. But hey, let's face it, every year is different, as in my experience of kind of watching birds in arrival times and so forth. But yes, they are coming. They're on their way. I was in the hills just the other day doing a bit of bird survey work, and I got my first cuckoo, which is always good. And the lesser white-throats and common white-throats are now starting to fill back in. There's just been a bit of a lull in effect, but they're catching up, and they're catching up soon. Of course, the willow warblers and chiff-chaffs and the earlier ones, the earlier migrants have been, and the numbers are really quite good. Anecdotally speaking, that is. We'll have to wait till the end of the season to find out whether this season was actually a good or a bad one. But we're seeing these birds piling in. And, the swallows have been coming all the way from South Africa, and the swifts are absolutely incredible. They've been coming from a similar sort of place, and a lot of the sub-Saharan migrants are kind of just making their way. Can you imagine these little waifs of birds travelling all that distance? And they're only weighing about sort of 15 grams or so. They'll travel all this distance. They'll cross the Sahara just to get their kind of into the northern grounds to breed. And that's ingrained in them. It's in their DNA, and they've been making these journeys. The species birds have been making these journeys for millions of years. It's incredible, actually. But yeah, we've got birds in, but you'll still see birds like swallows making their way north, because they're passage migrants, and we do see them passing through this area, and they'll be heading really into the Arctic Circle to breed. It's absolutely incredible when you think of their journeys. Absolutely amazing. So it's not just the terns that make these incredible journeys. But yes, all the while this kind of summer visitor stuff has been happening, our resident birds, the house sparrows, the dunnocks, the blue tits, grey tits, blackbirds, song thrushes, have been just going about their business, raising their young. So we're seeing young on the wing just now as well, which is incredible. So we're seeing the young blackbirds being fed by parents in our gardens. We're seeing house sparrows the same. And you can tell the young ones, because they're all a bit kind of gawky and they've got short tails. They'll be about the same size as the adults, but they'll have short tails and they'll look sort of kind of awkward. But if you look closely, you will see that they'll have gapes. Just at the base of their bills, they'll have this kind of enlarged little bit of what appears to be like flesh, and that kind of is known as the gape, and that sort of enables them to have enlarged mouths so they can actually take more food in. So yes, check out for those. And these birds have, as I've mentioned, these resident birds have been going out their business, so they'll have young on the wing. So at this time of year, if you see a young bird sort of sitting in somewhere where you think is not quite right, it's been left there by its parents. This is normal behaviour. The parents know exactly where it is, and there's this calling relationship that they have. So please just leave it. Leave it exactly where it is. Don't try to say, it needs to be looked after. It doesn't need to be looked after, unless it's in grave danger, which is rare. But please just leave it. And the adults will be coming back. They'll have popped into a safe place, waiting for the return so they can feed it and keep it it's on its way. So please just leave well alone. The parents will look after it. Thank you very much. But this time of year, there's just so much activity. There's birds singing, there's birds feeding young, and it's just, I love this time of year. It's great. There's just so much renewal going on, and we're seeing so much energy putting into our bird populations. I love it, and it's so exciting. So please enjoy the spring and listen out for bird song. It's so uplifting. Great stuff.
And so, to the sound of War Blackbird, here's Tom with some things to be getting on with in the garden this week.
Well, it's jobs for the week time, and I've been planting out one or two of my vegetables, which are fairly hardy after all. They were allegedly tender when they went into the unheated greenhouse, but they've had some cold nights in there. I thought it was time to get them out, so I've put them out. The sweet corn, the runner beans. I've also noticed that after 4 weeks underground, the potatoes which I planted, after all about 15 centimetres, 6 inches below the surface, they had shoots on at the time, but I've waited 4 weeks for them to break the surface. Their tender young shoots had just come above soil level, and I've earthed them up, bringing up the earth from either side of the row into a sort of a long pyramidal shape, and that protects them from any touch of frost that's going round, this getting towards the end of May, but it also keeps them in the dark, and that's important. You don't want any of the tubers emerging above the surface and becoming green, because they have a poisonous element about them, the green parts. But of course we cut them off or dump the ones that are green. Potatoes are well away now. I've been looking at the greenhouse, and I've got to think now not about keeping everything in there until the frost goes. It's become a bit like Doctor Who's TARDIS time machine, stretching at the sides, but I've got a lot of the stuff out now, but I've got to think about the crops that are going to grow in there. The peaches are the size of plums at the moment, and I'm thinning them out. The grapes have got bunches on, embryo bunches, very small, but they need plenty of air going through and plenty of space. Most important of all, I've just put the tomatoes in their final pots. They're stood on the greenhouse border, and they need plenty of air circulating around them. So I still have quite a lot of ornamental, half-hardy ornamental annuals in there, in pots. Some were sown in cell trays, and those plugs from there were transferred into small pots, and they've been growing on in them. I'm thinking of things like trailing lobelia for our hanging basket and our different troughs and so on outside. There is Nicotiana, the tobacco plant there. There is also Cosmos. What else is in there? There's Begonia semperflorens, quite a lot of those as well, and several plants of that ilk. It's reached the stage where I'm just about ready to plant them out in the beds. Maybe a week or so more coming, but I can certainly bring the containers into the greenhouse now. Get them on the sack barrow, bring them into the greenhouse. There is a bit of room, even on the floor. Plant them up with these half-hardy annuals, which are rather quite tough actually, and let them grow on in there for a short while, as people do with the hanging baskets. Give them a week or so, maybe 10 days in the greenhouse, the unheated greenhouse, and then hang them up outside. That will help a lot, so I can get a free run air circulating for these tomato crop, for the grape crop, and for the peach crop. Other things carry on in the greenhouse, of course, as usual. I'm bringing some of the pot plants which have stood all winter in the garden room or conservatory of the house. They need chopping back now, geranium, fuchsia, things of that nature, geraniums especially, and repotting, taking some of the old soil from the base of them and really sorting out the greenhouse so that it's got display area in as well as a good crop growing area. Out in the garden there, the lawn just keeps on growing. The grass is growing at a rate of knots now. I've had it on a higher cut than usual, the blades, but it's time to start cutting it down a wee bit, lowering the blades and working towards getting a summer level. Weeds, I've got them. Around the borders, hand weeding, but on a hot day, I just get the hoe out. I've got one of those beautiful two-sided hoes, which is super, cut through anything, and just lay them low. Annual weeds this is, on the surface, they desiccate, the sun gets on them, and then you can rake them off. And of course they've not got seed heads in, put them into the composting bin, in our case the hot bin, which preserves or makes compost so rapidly. It's just a brilliant thing to have. Keep on top of the weeding, sow a few vegetables to follow up outdoors, your salad crops, get them into drills now, your summer turnips, your beetroot, etc. Whatever you do, enjoy your gardening.
You've been listening to Gardener Tom Pattinson, Birder Tom Cadwallender from the British Trust for Ornithology, and Steve Lowe from the Northumberland Rivers Trust and Cresswell Peel Tower. I'm Carl Steinson, and don't forget you can listen back to all the previous reports we've done on the Nature Garden podcast. That's the Nature Garden podcast. Enjoy your gardening and time outdoors with nature. Bye for now.